Welcome to Fairy Tale Dreams, where every story holds a new adventure. Settle in, and let's begin.
Once upon a time, there lived in the world an evil spirit, but one of the most wicked. He created a deceitful mirror. In it, everything good and beautiful looked bad and repulsive, and vice versa. Everything bad and repulsive was reflected as good and beautiful. Unfortunately, one day the mirror fell and shattered into countless pieces, which scattered across the world. To this very day, no one has been able to gather them. When such a piece gets into our eyes, we treat rudely those whom we love the most, and if it enters our hearts, we become callous and cold. Not far from the domain of this evil spirit, there was a small town where two neighboring children lived, Kay and Gerda. They always played together and loved each other so much that the pea tendrils that sprouted in the garden in front of Kai's house intertwined branches with the rose that grew on Gerda's windowsill. The two children often visited each other and told each other stories, and in winter they would go sledding with their sleighs. One frosty evening, Kai sat by the window and watched the falling snowflakes. Lo and behold, a snowflake landed on the windowsill and began to grow. It grew and turned into a young woman, wrapped in a fluffy fur coat. Her face was as transparent as ice, and her eyes glowed like two cold stars. It was the Snow Queen herself. Kai watched her entranced, and for a moment it seemed to him that she was calling him by name. Soon the snow melted and spring arrived. The trees turned green, the swallows built their nests, and Kai and Gerda played outside all day long. One day they were sitting in the garden and looking at a picture book. "Oh, something got into my eye!" exclaimed Kai. And a little later again, "Oh, something pierced my heart!" Gerda looked into his eyes, but he pulled back and said, "It passed. I must have imagined it, but the truth was different. Because you remember what happened with the lying mirror, don't you?" Poor Kai. He already carried one small piece of it in his heart and another in his eyes. From that moment on, the good neighbor child whom Gerda loved so much became heartless and wicked. "You are so ugly," it said to her, "and your roses are awful." And it tore every last one of them off. Past tense. Kai did not want to play with little Gerda, but she continued to love him even though he always insulted her. Winter came. The streets were covered with snow and the children went out to play. Kai forgot about his friend and ran off to the ice rink by himself. And there he saw, who do you think? The Snow Queen. Wrapped in her fluffy fur coat, she sat in a huge carriage, in front of which was harnessed a snow-white horse. Fast as an arrow, Kai tied his sled to the carriage, and at that very moment, he was carried away so swiftly that he almost got scared. He rose high into the clouds. Black ravens circled above his head. Icy whirlwinds howled beneath his feet. The round moon shone in his eyes, and the sled did not stop. Finally, he heard the voice of the beautiful Snow Queen. "We've almost arrived," she said, "but why are you trembling? Come snuggle up to me," and she wrapped him with her garment. Then she bent down and kissed him on the forehead. Oh, her kiss was colder even than an icicle! Kai had forgotten his entire previous life and no longer even felt the cold. Meanwhile, poor Gerda was knocking from door to door, looking for her lost friend. But no one knew where he was. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. Spring finally arrived, and the warm sun once again lit up the earth. Gerda went to the river, sat in an abandoned boat, and drifted downstream. "Little river, you see and know everything," she whispered. "Please take me to Kai." The boat sailed and stopped at dusk. Gerda stepped ashore and walked wherever her eyes would lead her. Soon she found herself in a thick forest and caught sight of a raven, black as night. "Raven, haven't you seen my friend Kai?" asked the little girl. "Oh, ga! Croaked the bird. "Your friend Kai flew past me sitting in the Snow Queen's carriage." "And where does this queen live?" Gerda wanted to know. "Why, in Lapland," replied the raven, "in the land of eternal winter. Here, ask this reindeer. He knows how to get there." Gerda took pity on the reindeer and said to him, "Please take me to my friend Kai." He is in the castle of the Snow Queen, who lives in Lapland. The deer agreed to give her a ride on his back. Little Gerda mounted him, and they both flew faster than the wind. Day and night they galloped without stopping, until at last they arrived in the land of eternal winter. There they saw a huge castle. Its walls were made of snowdrifts, and the windows were made of icy wind. Gerda said goodbye to the deer and rushed towards the castle. And what was Kay doing, meanwhile? Of course, he wasn't thinking about his little friend at all. When Gerda crossed the threshold, he didn't even recognize her. "Kay, darling Kay!" she exclaimed and rushed to hug him. Her hot tears fell on his chest and melted the piece of the deceptive mirror in his frozen heart. Then Kai also wept, and his tears washed away the piece that was stuck in his eye. "Gerda," he cried, "where have you been all this time?" And then he looked around in surprise and asked, "Where am I? How did I get here?" Holding hands, the two children left the queen's domains, and outside, the reindeer was waiting for them. He got them onto his back and took them back home, and now everything was exactly as it was before.
Thank you for joining me on Fairy Tale Dreams. May your night be filled with the most magical dreams. Good night.